Hello, my dear children. Today we are going to learn another interesting literature lesson. The Swiss Family Robinson, Chapter 5, Finding a Place for a Home. Let's refresh our minds from Chapter 4 back to the ship. Can you remember the animals Mr. David Robinson and Fritz brought from the wrecked ship to the land? Cow, sheep, goats, donkey, pig. Finding a place for a home. Chapter 5. Let's see the characters in this chapter. Mr. David Robinson, he is the father and the narrator of the story. Mrs. Robinson, she is the mother. Fritz, the eldest son. Ernest, the second son. Jack, the third son. And little Francis, the youngest son. Finding a place for a home, Chapter 5. Mr. David Robinson asked from Mrs. Robinson, "What did you do, my dear, while Fritz and I were on the ship?" Then Mrs. Robinson said, "I found a place for our new home. The heat in the tent was more than we could bear, and there are no trees here to sit under. So Ernest and Jack took their guns, and we carried with us enough food for the day. The two dogs came too. We came to a small river and crossed it on stones. Then we went on and reached some high ground and were surprised at the beauty of the country. From there, I could see a small group of trees in the distance. We went on and at last came to the trees. There were only 10 or 12 trees, but they were the biggest trees I have ever seen. We stopped and ate our dinner there. It seemed to me the perfect place to live in. There, now you know my story. I went to look for a new place to live in and I found one. If you really want to please me, promise we will go there tomorrow and make a home for ourselves in one of those giant trees." When Mrs. Robinson said that they are planning to make a home for themselves in one of those giant trees, Mr. David Robinson was surprised to hear. "What? In a tree? A house in a tree? We might perhaps live under a tree. But how would we get up into the tree? Fly?" Then Mrs. Robinson said, "You may laugh if you wish, but I am quite sure we could build a small hut among the branches with a way of getting up to it. Well, we will all go and see the place tomorrow and think about what we can do." It's time to make smart choices. Let's practice. Exercises on page number 70. Children, can you answer these two questions? First one, why did the narrator's wife, Mrs. Robinson, want to find a new home? Second one, where did she want to make the new home? Going to our new home, Chapter 6. During the night, Mr. David Robinson had thought over what Mrs. Robinson had said. And as they sat at breakfast next day, Mr. David Robinson said, "Yes, we'll go and live in that place that Mrs. Robinson saw on the other side of the river." So Mr. David Robinson turned to the boys and said, "Now, what's the first thing we must do?" Then Jack said, I know, we must move the tent there and then take all our things and then take the animals. What do you think, Fritz? Said Mr. David Robinson. Fritz said, that place is on the other side of the river. Mother, Ernest, Jack, and Francis went across on those stones. But the cow, donkey, and pig can't cross on those stones, and we can't carry our things across the water. Well, what's the first thing we must do? We must build a bridge. That's the first thing, isn't it? No, the first thing is to go out to the ship and bring wood to build the bridge with, said Ernest. Then Jack said, we don't have to do that because I saw lots of wood on the shore where that lobster caught me. The sea had carried it there from the ship, and there will be more there now. Good boy. Let's go and see what we can find, said Mr. David Robinson. Jack was right. They found plenty of wood. So they tied together the big pieces which would be useful to them and pulled them to the mouth of the stream. Then they got the donkey and with its help pulled the pieces of wood up the stream and to the land where they wanted to build their bridge. With difficulty, they laid 3 long pieces across the river. Then they nailed boards across them. It was very hard work and they all slept heavily that night. The next morning, they got up early and began preparing for their journey. So they put their pots and their food and all their small things into bags and hung them one on each side of the cow and the donkey. They put little bags on the goats, but they couldn't make the pig carry anything. They put Francis on the back of the donkey so that it could not run away. The boys and Mr. David Robinson carried their bed coverings and all that they would need for the first few days in their new home. When they were all ready, Mrs. Robinson said, we can't leave the hens here or we shall lose them all. So Fritz and Ernest then began running about trying to catch the hens. They could not catch one. Mrs. Robinson said, I'll show you how to do it. So she threw a little food on the ground. All the hens ran to it. Then she threw some more inside the tent and they all went inside the tent. While they were eating, Mrs. Robinson shut the opening of the tent. Now, Jack, you go into the tent, catch the birds and hand them out to us. We'll tie their legs and put them in a basket on the cow's back, said Mrs. Robinson. At last, they were ready to start. They put all the rest of their things inside the tent and closed it up carefully. Fritz and Mrs. Robinson marched in front. Then came the cow and the donkey with Francis sitting on its back. Then the goats led by Jack. The monkey rode on the goat from which he got his milk. After him came Ernest and the sheep, and Mr. David Robinson came last. The dogs ran round, helping to keep them all in line. The pig did not want to come with them as they left it behind. When they reached the bridge, the pig joined them. When it saw them going away, it came running after them, making angry noises. They crossed the bridge carefully, one at a time. Mr. David Robinson was afraid that the weight of the cow might break it, so the donkey went first. The bridge was all right, so the cow went next, and then the rest followed. But not the pig. Oh no, the pig would not go on the bridge. They tried to drive it, but no. Then, when they had all got across, the pig swam across and came after them. So they came to the place where their new home was to be. What wonderful trees, said Fritz. How high they are. Yes, I didn't think they were as big as this. This is a very good place. If we could climb one of those trees and make a house there, we would be safe from all the wild animals, said Mr. David Robinson. They tied up the animals so that they could not wander away, but not the pig. The pig lay down and slept. They set the hens free and they flew up into the trees. Mrs. Robinson had started a fire and cooked a meal for them. It's time to make smart choices again. Let's practice. Exercises on page number 70. Children, can you answer these three questions? First one, what did they build first? Second one, how did they catch the hens? Third one, how did the hens travel to the new place? I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Please complete all the student notes of chapter 5 and 6. Goodbye and see you soon and stay safe.